Well, welcome to Dirty Secrets, the channel where the truth can't stay hidden. Betrayal from a partner is devastating. It's the kind of wound that cuts deep into your sense of self, making you question your worth, your judgment, your very idea of love. But betrayal from family cuts even deeper. Because when a partner betrays you, you lose love. When family betrays you, you lose blood. You lose the people who were supposed to be your foundation, the ones you thought would never hurt you. And when those two betrayals collide, when the person you promised your life to and the person you grew up with both turn against you, it doesn't just break your heart, it shatters your world. Tonight's story is about Michael, a man who thought his life was steady, safe, even blessed. He had a wife he adored, a younger brother he trusted more than anyone, and a future he believed was secure. But one night, all of that was destroyed. Because Michael didn't just discover that his wife was unfaithful. He discovered that she was unfaithful with the one person he thought he could always count on, his own brother. This isn't just a story about infidelity. It's a story about love, loyalty, and the ultimate act of betrayal. Michael and Rachel had been married for 6 years. On the surface, they lived a modest but comfortable life. Their house wasn't extravagant, but it was warm, filled with personal touches photos from vacations, framed notes Rachel had left for Michael in the early days of their relationship, little signs of a life carefully built together. Michael often looked around that house and felt proud. Proud of the life he and Rachel had built from scratch. Proud of how far they'd come since those early days when money was tight, when they were just two young dreamers renting a tiny apartment and living on takeout. They had stability now. Good jobs that paid the bills, a steady rhythm of dinners together, weekend outings, quiet nights watching movies on the couch. And more importantly, they had plans for the future. Both wanted children soon. Rachel would smile when they talked about it, painting pictures of family road trips, little league games, holiday mornings filled with the sound of laughter. To Michael, it felt like a promise, like the universe had finally rewarded him with the kind of love people spent their lives searching for. And then there was Daniel. Daniel was Michael's younger brother by 3 years, and for as long as Michael could remember, they had been inseparable. Growing up, they shared everything. A cramped bedroom filled with posters and hand-me-down furniture, countless hours playing basketball in the driveway, late-night talks where they confessed their fears and promised each other that no matter what life threw at them, they'd always have each other's backs. Even as adults, that bond never wavered, or so Michael believed. Daniel came over often, sometimes announced, sometimes unannounced. He joined Michael and Rachel for dinner, spent weekends watching football, and even tagged along on a vacation or two. To anyone looking in, it was the perfect picture. Two brothers who had grown up close, now building a future side by side, and a wife who fit seamlessly into that dynamic. Naturally, Daniel and Rachel became friends. They laughed together, swapped stories, sometimes teased Michael in a way only siblings can. And why would Michael ever question it? This was his brother, his blood. The one person he thought he would never have to doubt. To Michael, life felt secure. He had love, he had family, he had trust. But the thing about trust is, it's fragile, and often it breaks without warning. At first, it started small, almost invisible. The kinds of things you'd never think twice about until you put them all together. Rachel and Daniel seemed to laugh a little too much at inside jokes, jokes that Michael wasn't part of. He would walk into a room and see them exchange glances, quick, fleeting, but loaded with something he couldn't quite identify. One evening, Daniel stopped by for dinner. Michael was in the kitchen chopping vegetables when he heard laughter spill from the living room. Rachel and Daniel were sitting close on the couch, their shoulders almost touching. They were scrolling through her phone, whispering, giggling. By the time Michael walked in with a plate, Rachel pulled the phone back quickly as if caught doing something wrong. "What's so funny?" Michael asked, trying to keep his tone light. Rachel looked up too quickly, her smile forced. "Just a meme. You wouldn't get it." Daniel chuckled, but it wasn't the carefree laugh Michael knew from childhood. It was nervous, controlled. Michael smiled back, but inside, his gut twisted. It was the first time he felt a sting of unease. Then, there were the visits. Daniel seemed to be around more often, sometimes stopping by when Michael wasn't home. Rachel brushed it off as casual. He just needed company, she'd say. It's harmless. He's your brother. And Michael wanted to believe her. Of course he did. Daniel had always been family. Why would he question that? But the little things piled up. Rachel would plan sudden girls' nights with friends' nights that seemed to line up perfectly with evenings. Daniel claimed he had to work late. Michael noticed the small details. A faint shift in Rachel's tone whenever Daniel's name came up. The way she laughed a little too hard at his jokes. The way her phone seemed to light up more often when Daniel wasn't around. One weekend, Michael's car broke down. He couldn't drive Rachel to an event she had planned to attend. Daniel offered to take her. Don't worry about it, bro. I've got her covered, he said casually. Michael was grateful at the time. But hours later, scrolling through social media, his gratitude turned to ice. There they were, Daniel and Rachel, at a bar, smiling for a photo someone else had posted, glasses in hand. No sign of the event Rachel had said she was going to. When Michael confronted her, Rachel grew defensive immediately. Are you seriously accusing me of something? He's your brother. You should be ashamed for even thinking that. Her words cut deep. The guilt-tripping worked. For a while. But doubt has a way of growing louder when you try to silence it. At night, lying awake beside her, Michael found himself replaying every glance, every laugh, every time Daniel and Rachel had brushed past each other in the kitchen. And though he hated himself for it, he couldn't stop the thought that whispered louder and louder in his mind. Something isn't right. Suspicion is like a seed, small, almost invisible at first. But once it's planted, it grows roots. It digs deep. It spreads until it consumes everything else. For Michael, that seed was already there. And with each passing week, it grew. He tried to shake it off. He told himself he was imagining things, that stress was making him paranoid. After all, Rachel was his wife. Daniel was his brother. If he couldn't trust them, who could he trust? But no matter how much he tried to silence the voice inside him, it grew louder. Rachel began scheduling more girls' nights. At first, they seemed harmless. She'd say she was meeting friends from work, old college roommates, sometimes neighbors. But whenever Michael asked for details, her answers were vague. Too vague. What did you guys do? Ugh, he'd ask casually. Oh, just had a drink, caught up on stuff, she'd say, already changing the subject. Sometimes her hair smelled faintly of cologne when she came home. Not hers, not Michael's. At the same time, Daniel's work schedule grew busier, or so he claimed. Late nights, sudden projects, weekend hours. But more often than not, his late nights lined up perfectly with Rachel's girls' nights. Coincidences. That's what Michael tried to call them, but coincidences pile up fast. One weekend, Michael scrolled through his phone late at night. He stopped on a post from one of Rachel's friends. A group photo. Rachel wasn't in it, neither was Daniel. But just 2 posts later, from someone entirely different, there was another picture. Rachel and Daniel. Together, at a different bar across town. They weren't with the group Rachel claimed to be seeing. When Michael asked her the next morning, her response was sharp, defensive. Do you really not trust me? Do you really think I'd do something like that with him? He's your brother, Michael. Do you hear how insane you sound? Her words hit him like a slap. The shame burned in his chest. How could he accuse her of something so unthinkable? But deep down, the shame didn't erase the doubt. Then came the phone calls. Michael would wake up in the middle of the night to find Rachel missing from bed. Sometimes he'd hear her voice from the kitchen, low and hushed. When he asked about it, she always had an answer ready. It was just Sarah. She's going through a tough time. It was work. They needed something urgent. But the way she avoided his eyes, the way her hands fidgeted, it told another story. Finally, one night, Michael couldn't hold it in anymore. Rachel, he said quietly as they sat at the dinner table, what's going on with you and Daniel? Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. For a split second, he saw fear flash across her face. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced with anger. Are you serious? She snapped. You're accusing me of something with your brother? Do you know how disgusting that sounds? Her voice rose, sharp and cutting. I can't believe you'd even think that. You should be ashamed of yourself. The guilt-tripping worked for a while. Michael backed down, his face burning. But as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, the shame turned into something else. Resolve. Because somewhere deep inside, he knew. The woman sleeping beside him was hiding something. And the brother he trusted most might not be the brother he thought he knew. The doubt had grown too loud to ignore. The truth has a way of finding you. Not when you're ready. Not when you expect it. But in the quiet moments, when you least anticipate it, it crashes into your life like a storm. For Michael, that storm hit one Friday night. He was supposed to be gone overnight on a work trip. Meetings, hotel rooms, late dinners with clients, the usual routine. Rachel kissed him goodbye at the door, smiling softly, wishing him luck. Her arms lingered around him a little too long, almost as if she were relieved to see him go. He drove away, convinced he wouldn't see her until the following evening. But the trip was canceled. The client pulled out at the last minute, and by 8 p.m., Michael was heading back home. He thought about calling Rachel to tell her the good news, to surprise her. But then he imagined the look on her face, the way her eyes would light up when she saw him walk through the door unexpectedly. So he kept the secret. He wanted to surprise her. But it wasn't Rachel who was surprised that night. The moment he turned into his street, Michael's heart skipped. Daniel's car, parked in the driveway, his brother, here, at night, when he wasn't supposed to be. At first, Michael brushed it off. Maybe Daniel had come over to keep Rachel company. Maybe he'd dropped something off. Maybe... But the house was dark, except for the faint glow spilling from the upstairs window. Michael's pulse quickened. He parked quietly, shutting the car door with deliberate care. His keys trembled in his hand as he unlocked the front door. The familiar creak of the hinges echoed too loudly in the silence of the night. The house smelled faintly of candles, Rachel's favorite vanilla scent. But underneath it, something else lingered. Something sharp. The smell of alcohol. The faint trace of cologne. Michael's footsteps were slow as he moved through the living room. His ears strained against the silence until he heard it. Laughter, coming from upstairs. His bedroom. Michael's chest tightened as he climbed the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. His legs trembled, but he forced himself forward, one cautious movement at a time. At the top of the stairs, he paused. The laughter was clearer now. Rachel's voice, Daniel's voice. Intertwined, carefree, intimate. It felt like knives piercing his chest. For a brief moment, Michael closed his eyes, praying he was wrong. Praying that when he opened that door, he'd find something innocent, something that made sense. But deep down, he already knew. His hand shook as it reached for the handle. His knuckles whitened as he pushed it open. And then, silence. Two pairs of eyes snapped toward him. Rachel, Daniel. Together. Rachel's hair was tousled, her face flushed. She clutched the sheets to her chest, frozen in shock. Daniel scrambled upright, his expression wide-eyed and pale, as if he had seen a ghost. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. The world seemed to stop. Michael stood there, staring at the two people he loved most in the world, the woman he had promised forever to, and the brother who had been by his side since childhood. Together, in his bed. The scene seared into his mind, a picture he knew he'd never erase. His heart didn't just break. It shattered into pieces too small to ever fit back together. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. The lamp on the nightstand hummed. The room smelled faintly of vanilla candle and something metallic panic, perhaps, or the memory of a life splitting open. Michael's voice came out low, rough, more gravel than sound. "Get dressed," Daniel swallowed. "Mike, listen. Get dressed." The words were steady now, clipped into orders. "Both of you." Rachel gathered the sheet tighter, eyes glassy. Daniel reached for his jeans, fumbling, hands shaking the way boys shake when they've been caught stealing from a till. Michael didn't look away. He let the silence do the rest. When they were finally standing improvised, disheveled, humbled, Michael spoke without raising his volume. The calm was worse than shouting. "How long?" No one answered. "How long, Rachel?" Not a question anymore, an indictment. Her throat worked. It wasn't planned. Timeline. He pointed at the floor between them as if marking the place where truth would stand. "I want numbers." Daniel's gaze fell to the carpet. 8 months. The number hit like a body blow. 8 months wasn't a mistake. 8 months was a system, a second life. Michael's jaw flexed. "In my house?" Rachel flinched. "Not always." "So yes." Michael's eyes flicked to her and back to Daniel. "And you, my brother." He tasted the word like it had gone rotten. "Why?" Daniel's mouth opened. Nothing. Then a miserable trickle. "It started after that April barbecue. We were cleaning up. We were talking about you being stressed at work. One thing became another. We didn't mean—" "Don't insult me with didn't mean," Michael said. "You're not tripping over a curb. You choreographed 8 months. Rachel's voice broke. "We were lonely, Michael. You pulled away. You came home late. You barely spoke. You were always exhausted. I felt invisible." The narrator would say, "Pain looks for a justification. Betrayal looks for a reason. But reasons are not absolution-only explanations offered to the wrong judge." Michael nodded once, as if logging data into a ledger he would later burn. "So, you reached for the nearest oxygen tank." "My brother." Rachel's eyes filled. "I'm not saying it was right. I'm saying it happened because we were broken." "You were broken," Michael corrected. "We were bruised. There's a difference." He turned to Daniel. "When we were 10 and I lied to Mom about the broken window, who took the blame so I wouldn't lose my baseball game?" Daniel whispered. "You did." "And when you got suspended senior year, who stood in the principal's office and begged them to let you graduate?" "You did." The words were a rasp. "So, tell me how that brother," Michael said, voice barely above a whisper, "becomes this man." Daniel's face crumpled. "I don't know. I hate me too." "Not enough," Michael said. "Not enough to stop." He moved to the dresser, picked up a frame, their wedding photo. Rachel's veil catching sunlight. Michael's tie crooked because Daniel had yanked it into a hug moments before the ceremony. He looked at the picture for a long time, then turned it face down. "This ends tonight." He didn't look at their faces, only the space between them. "Rachel, you're going to pack a bag. You'll stay at Melissa's or a hotel. Your choice. Leave the house key on the kitchen counter before you go." Rachel reached out as if touch could rewind time. "Please, can we talk in the morning? Not like this." "This is the morning," Michael said. "For me. Sun's up whether we like it or not." He faced Daniel. "You will leave now. You won't contact me. You won't contact Mom and Dad to run PR. You will sit with what you did before you try to manufacture a version of it you can live with." Daniel nodded too fast, like a man drowning who mistakes the surface for safety. "I'll make it right, I swear." "You can't," Michael said. "You can only stop making it worse." Rachel's chin trembled. "Do you still love me?" Michael's answer came quickly, which made it sound crueler than it was. "Love is irrelevant. Trust is the currency of marriage, and the account is overdrawn beyond recovery." "But therapy?" she tried, hope flaring like a match in rain. "Therapy is for people who broke something and brought me the pieces," he said. "You hid the pieces and sold the table." Silence folded over them again. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. Life continued. It always does. "2 questions," Michael said, practical now. The way grief becomes when it realizes it has to pay bills. "Is she pregnant?" He looked at Rachel, then at Daniel. "Did either of you get careless enough to gamble with everyone's future?" "No," Rachel said at once, then softer. "No." "And does anyone else know?" Another beat. Daniel. "No." "Good," Michael said. "It will stay that way until I decide otherwise. I won't give you the dignity of a narrative." Rachel's tears came full now, shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Michael's eyes softened for the first and only time. Not forgiveness recognition of a person he had loved and the ruin she had made. I believe you're sorry. I also believe sorry is not a time machine. He stepped back, opened the path to the hallway with a small tilt of his head. Move. They did. The three of them filed through the doorway like actors exiting a stage where a play had ended badly 1,000 times. In the hallway, Michael paused by another frame and Daniel, at ages 12 and 9, grass-stained, gap-toothed, triumphed dumb after a backyard game. He didn't turn that one down. He left it. Let it indict or absolve as it wished. Downstairs, the kitchen felt colder than the bedroom. Rachel placed her key on the counter with a tiny clink that sounded bigger than a thunderclap. Daniel stood by the back door, hands jammed in his pockets. Not a boy, not a man, just the sum of a series of choices that had finally written him into a role he never thought he'd play. You'll hear from my attorney, Michael said to the room, which was the only way he could say it to them, without collapsing. There will be boundaries, custody arrangements when necessary, logistics, this. We don't talk about this again. Not with me. Daniel found his voice. Can I say goodbye to Mom and Dad before you tell them? You can say nothing to them, Michael said. That if I choose to tell them, I'll do it in a way that spares them an autopsy. You've done enough cutting. Rachel wiped her cheeks. Do you want me to take anything else right now? Clothes? Papers? I want you to take a mirror, Michael said, not unkindly, and look until you can say your name out loud without wincing. After that, we'll discuss clothes. She nodded, shame a heavy coat. Okay. Michael walked to the front door and opened it. Cool night air slid in, smelling of damp grass and distant rain. He stood aside, a doorman at the end of a life. Rachel went first. She hesitated on the threshold, turned as if to speak, thought better of it, and stepped into the dark. Daniel lingered. Mike, he said, voice small. Michael held up a hand. Don't make me remember you like this longer than I have to. Daniel bowed his head and left. The door closed with an ordinary click that didn't match the size of the ending it contained. Michael placed both palms against the wood and let his forehead rest there. For 3 long breaths, he was only a man remembering how to breathe. The narrator might tell you that people expect rage to be loud, but the most dangerous kind of rage is quiet, the kind that builds a scaffold for boundaries and then climbs down from the fire without looking back. Michael turned the deadbolt. He walked to the sink, ran the water, and scrubbed his hands as if the night were dirt that could be rinsed away. When the water ran cold, he shut it off and listened to the house settle. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Somewhere, a pipe clicked like a second hand. On the counter, beside the key Rachel had left, lay a chipped mug with a line of text across it. Grow where you're planted. He almost laughed, which is to say he almost cried. He took the wedding photo from upstairs and set it face down on the kitchen table. Next to it, he placed a blank legal pad and a pen. On the top line, he wrote in block letters, non-negotiables. Underneath, he listed 3 items. No contact beyond legal and logistical matters. Total disclosure of dates, locations, and any health risks now, in writing. Family communication happens through me, on my timeline. He capped the pen. He sat. He let the room be quiet around him until the quiet became a kind of mercy. Outside, a car engine started. Tires whispered against asphalt. Then there was only the house and the man inside it. The narrator would tell you this is the part where stories sometimes reach for melodrama, for smashed frames and shouted vows. But real endings are tidier and more terrible. A key on a counter. A door that will not open for the same person again. A list of rules written in a hand that no longer shakes. Upstairs, the bed waited like evidence. Michael didn't go back to it. He lay on the couch, shoes off, eyes open, watching the ceiling learn a new story. Dawn arrived without fanfare, as it always does. Light crept along the floorboards, paused at the coffee table, climbed the couch. He didn't sleep, but he didn't shatter either. Somewhere between one breath and the next, he realized something simple and brutal. The worst thing had happened, and he was still here. He sat up. The day would come with errands calls to make, an attorney to find, locks to change, a spare bedroom to claim as his own for however long he needed. Grief would take its shifts. Anger would clock in and clock out. Memory would insist on a highlight reel no one had asked to see. But for the first time in months, there was nothing hidden in his house. And that, he realized, was a beginning. Ugly, unchosen, but real. The days that followed were brutal. Michael had always imagined betrayal would feel like fire, sudden, scorching, unbearable. But the truth was colder. It was silence at breakfast. It was empty chairs at the dinner table. It was the absence of voices in rooms that had once felt alive. Rachel moved out within a week. She packed her things quickly, boxes and bags carried out like evidence from a crime scene. The house echoed differently without her, like the walls themselves were grieving. Daniel disappeared. For the first time in Michael's life, his brother's number stayed silent. No texts, no calls, just absence. And in that absence, a lifetime of memories replayed in Michael's head. The two boys racing bikes down the street, Daniel standing beside him at his wedding, laughing until their stomachs hurt, over inside jokes only brothers could understand, all poisoned now. Telling their parents was worse than Michael expected. He sat them down at the kitchen table, the same table where birthdays had been celebrated, where Thanksgiving pies had been served. His mother's hands folded neatly on her lap, his father leaning back in his chair, expectant. When he told them, his mother covered her mouth, eyes filling instantly with tears. His father just stared, as if someone had spoken a foreign language. They asked questions, of course, painful ones. How long? Why? What happens now? Questions Michael didn't want to answer, because each one tore the wound open wider. Family gatherings became impossible. Holidays fractured. His parents tried to split their time, seeing Michael on one day, Daniel on another. Every tradition crumbled under the weight of what had been done. Friends who had once admired Michael and Rachel's marriage now looked at him with pity. Neighbors whispered, awkwardly avoiding the subject when they saw him at the grocery store. Some offered sympathy, others silence. But Michael noticed something important. When disaster strikes, you find out who's really in your corner. Some people vanished, uncomfortable with the messiness of betrayal. But others leaned in. They brought meals. They called late at night just to listen. They reminded him that he wasn't alone, even when it felt like he was. At night, the house was the hardest. Michael would lie on the couch, staring at the ceiling, unable to return to the bed upstairs. Every creak in the house sounded louder. Every memory felt sharper. He would picture Rachel's laughter, Daniel's smirk. The scene in his bedroom seared into his mind like a scar that wouldn't fade. And always, the same question whispered in the dark. Was any of it real? The marriage? The brotherhood? The moments that had once felt sacred? If they could betray him so completely? Had it all been a lie from the beginning? That question haunted him more than the betrayal itself. Healing didn't come quickly. It came in small steps. Therapy was the first. Sitting across from a stranger, Michael unloaded years of trust, anger, and heartbreak. It was harder than anything he'd ever done. But with each session, the knots in his chest loosened a little more. He leaned on his true friends, the ones who showed up, who didn't flinch when he cried, who reminded him of his worth. They became his new foundation, the family he chose when blood had failed him. Michael also found strength in solitude. He started running, pounding the pavement with every ounce of rage in his body, until his lungs burned and his muscles ached. He journaled late into the night, pouring his pain onto paper so it wouldn't poison him inside. Slowly, he rediscovered himself. Not Michael the husband, not Michael the older brother, just Michael, the man who had survived the unthinkable and was still standing. And in that process, he learned something powerful. Betrayal says more about the betrayer than the betrayed. Rachel's weakness, Daniel's disloyalty. Neither defined Michael. They revealed who they were. But Michael refused to let their choices dictate his future. In time, Michael found peace. He realized that family isn't always defined by blood. It's defined by loyalty, by who shows up when life falls apart, by the people who hold your hand in the dark and remind you the sun will rise again. Rachel and Daniel had broken something sacred, but through that pain, Michael found clarity. He knew who he could trust. He knew what he deserved. And most importantly, he knew he could survive. This story isn't just about infidelity. It's about the pain of losing two of the closest people in your life at once. Michael's wife betrayed him. His brother betrayed him. But through that pain, he discovered something powerful. Even when those closest to you turn against you, you can rise again. Because betrayal might break trust, but it doesn't have to break you. Michael's story is proof of that. So if you've ever been betrayed by a lover, by a friend, even by family, remember this. Their choices are not a reflection of your worth. Their lies do not define your story. You do.